Come on! Why are you stopping? Voices shouted across the training field. A small woman halted mid-run, gasping for breath. Laughter erupted. If you can't handle it, just quit. But minutes later, silence fell over everything. She didn't just keep running. On her back was a wounded sergeant, and the entire camp stood frozen as she crossed the finish line. The question echoed long after. Who is she really? Summer training camp. Blazing heat. Hundreds of recruits lined up across the training ground. Among them stood Elena Moore, 25 years old. Long brown hair tied back tight, thin frame, worn-out running shoes that had seen better days. Elena didn't look like a warrior. She was just a file clerk assigned to the field for paperwork support, administrative duties. Nothing heroic about organizing forms and managing documentation. The young soldiers often mocked her. You're good with papers, but don't dream about being a real soldier. Every morning, Elena quietly set up water stations, organized training materials, and arranged signal flags. Small tasks, invisible work that kept everything running smoothly. Once, she picked up a dropped badge, cleaned it carefully, and placed it back on the command table. Such a tiny gesture. Nobody noticed except the badge's owner, who watched her with curious respect. The soldiers dismissed her. Small, weak, probably can't even run a few laps without losing her breath. But Elena never argued back. She just bowed politely and smiled quietly. That morning, when everyone assembled, the general stepped forward, his voice booming across the field. Today I want to see real spirit. Who dares to step up and lead by example? The entire camp fell dead silent. Not one person moved. Suddenly, Elena stepped forward. Laughter burst out immediately. What's she planning to do? Can she even run? But Elena's eyes shone with determination. If nobody else will do it, then I will. More laughter followed. These muscled recruits, trained athletes, seasoned veterans, all watching a skinny file clerk volunteer for physical trials. This should be entertaining, someone whispered. She'll quit in 5 minutes, another predicted. But something in Elena's posture was different. The way she stood, the way she breathed, the way her eyes focused on the finish line like she'd been preparing for this moment her entire life. A retired veteran sitting in the back row would later recall, "That day, I watched a small woman raise her hand when 100 strong young men stayed silent. I thought to myself, either she's crazy or she's something special." The general studied Elena for a long moment. "Are you certain about this, miss?" "Yes, sir," Elena replied without hesitation. He nodded slowly. "Very well, but understand, this isn't a casual jog. This is a military endurance test. People twice your size have failed." Elena straightened her shoulders. "I understand, sir." What nobody understood was that Elena had been preparing for this moment longer than any of them could imagine. The physical fitness test began. Elena ran alongside hundreds of others. Within just a few minutes, she was falling behind, breathing hard. Whistles and jeers rose from the crowd. "Just stop! You're only wasting everyone's time." "This is embarrassing to watch." Elena stumbled, slowing down. Many people shook their heads. "We told you so." She only knows how to push papers. Through the mocking laughter, Elena looked back over her shoulder. Behind her, an older sergeant, a war veteran with shrapnel scars, had collapsed from a recurring leg injury. He was clutching his knee, face twisted in pain. Nobody stopped to help. They just kept running past him. The sergeant waved Elena away. "Keep going, miss. Don't worry about me." But Elena wasn't listening. She turned around and ran back to him. The sergeant groaned, "Leave me behind. You can't carry me anyway." Elena shook her head firmly. "I don't leave anyone behind." She knelt down, pulled the sergeant's arm over her shoulder, and lifted him up with surprising strength. Step by heavy step, she began walking forward. Sweat and blood stained her shirt, but her grip never loosened. The crowd that had been running ahead began to slow down and look back. The laughter gradually died away. One young soldier called out in disbelief, "Is she carrying the sergeant?" The sight was surreal. A thin woman, maybe 120 pounds soaking wet, supporting a 200-pound veteran on her back. Each step looked impossibly difficult, but she kept moving forward. Wind whipped through her hair. Her face was bright red from exertion, but her eyes never left the finish line ahead. The officers observing from the sidelines began exchanging meaningful glances. A captain whispered to his colleague, "That's not normal strength." Who taught her to carry weight like that? Something was becoming clear. Elena's posture under load, her breathing technique, her weight distribution. These weren't skills you learned from filing reports. "That's military-grade load-bearing technique," another officer observed. Special Forces level. A clue emerged. Elena's form was textbook perfect, like she'd received elite training. The sergeant would later recount, "I thought I was done for. My leg was screaming, and I couldn't take another step. But this woman nobody respected. She carried me the entire distance. In that moment, I knew she wasn't ordinary." Elena's steps became more labored as the distance stretched on. The sergeant was getting heavier with each yard. Her legs were shaking from exhaustion. "Put me down," the sergeant pleaded. "I'm too heavy." "You're not too heavy," Elena gasped. "I've carried heavier." That phrase hung in the air. "I've carried heavier." When? Where? How would a file clerk know about carrying injured soldiers? Other recruits had stopped running entirely now. They were walking alongside Elena, watching in stunned silence as she refused to quit. One recruit whispered to another, "Look at her technique. She's distributing the weight perfectly. That's not something you learn from books." "Where did she train?" his friend replied. The finish line was still half a mile away. Elena's breathing was becoming ragged, but her pace never slowed. The crowd was no longer laughing. They were witnessing something extraordinary, something that would change how they thought about strength, determination, and what it really meant to serve others. But they still had no idea who Elena Moore really was. As Elena approached the finish line, hundreds of soldiers stopped running to watch. They were breathing hard from their own race, but they stood in complete silence. Elena crossed the finish line with the sergeant still on her back. The entire camp was dead quiet. The general walked down from the observation platform, his voice tight with emotion. "What's your name, soldier?" Elena was gasping for air. "Elena Moore, file clerk, sir." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A file clerk? This woman who just carried a grown man across a military obstacle course? The general's eyes narrowed. Moore? Which Moore? An officer quickly searched through personnel files on his tablet. Suddenly, his face went pale. "Sir, she's listed in the classified Kraken unit training records." The atmosphere exploded. Kraken unit. The legendary Special Operations Program. The training so intense that only 1 in 50 candidates survived. The unit responsible for impossible rescue missions behind enemy lines. Elena stood silently, eyes focused on the ground. A soldier stammered, "That's impossible. That would explain why she moves like special forces." The general lowered his voice. You were in Kraken? Why did you leave? Elena's answer was barely audible. I failed my team. I wanted to serve quietly. The entire camp fell silent. The image of an anonymous file clerk had just transformed into a former elite operative with classified training. The mocking laughter had turned into respectful awe. But there was more to the story. An intelligence officer stepped forward. Sir, there's additional information in her file. Go ahead. Elena Moore, call sign Shepherd. 3 tours in Afghanistan. Specialized in combat rescue operations, she's credited with saving 47 soldiers under fire. The silence deepened. She was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for carrying wounded teammates 12 miles through enemy territory. Alone. Elena's hands were shaking now, not from exhaustion, but from memories she'd tried to bury. The general's voice softened. What happened, Elena? My last mission, she whispered. I was supposed to extract a captured pilot. Intelligence was wrong. It was a trap. My entire team was killed because I led them into an ambush. Tears began flowing down her dirt-stained cheeks. I couldn't save them, so I requested transfer to administrative duties. I thought, if I couldn't be trusted with lives in combat, maybe I could serve by keeping records, filing reports, small things. The sergeant she'd carried to the finish line struggled to his feet. Ma'am, you just saved my life. Again. Again? The general asked. The sergeant nodded. She pulled me out of Kandahar 7 years ago. I never knew her name. We just called her Shepherd. More soldiers began recognizing her now. Whispered conversations spread through the ranks. She's the one who carried Martinez out of that IED blast. She saved Rodriguez when the helicopter went down. The medic who stayed behind to treat wounded while under fire. Elena had spent years hiding her identity, trying to disappear into paperwork and administrative duties. But her instincts, her training, her heart, they couldn't be hidden forever. The general addressed the entire assembly. This woman has saved more lives than most of us will ever know. She's been serving among us, asking for nothing, expecting no recognition. He turned back to Elena. You didn't fail your team. Your team was failed by bad intelligence. There's a difference. Elena looked up for the first time, meeting his eyes. You've been punishing yourself for something that wasn't your fault, he continued. But today, you proved that you're still the same person who risked everything to save others. The sergeant Elena had carried spoke up. Permission to say something, sir? Go ahead. Ma'am, you've been carrying guilt for years, but today you carried me, and you carried it well. Elena smiled through her tears, the first genuine smile anyone had seen from her in months. The crowd began to applaud, slowly at first, then building into thunderous appreciation. Elena Moore, the invisible file clerk, was finally visible again. Not as the soldier who'd lost a team, but as the hero who'd never stopped serving others. After that day, nobody dared call Elena the weak file clerk anymore. The young soldiers' attitudes changed completely. During every run, they helped slower teammates, making sure nobody was left behind. Many officers said, "The Kraken spirit has returned because of her." But Elena remained humble. Every afternoon, she still collected paperwork, arranged flags, and cleaned up quietly. She didn't promote herself as a hero. She just continued working in the background. A young soldier confided, "Watching her taught me that real strength isn't about proving yourself. It's about lifting others up when they fall." Elena had shown them something more valuable than military tactics or physical fitness. She'd demonstrated what service really meant. The base commander issued new standing orders. No soldier left behind applies to training as well as combat. If someone falls, you help them up. The culture shifted. Recruits who struggled weren't mocked anymore. They were supported. The strongest soldiers began pairing with the weakest, helping them improve instead of leaving them behind. Elena's quiet example had transformed an entire military base. One evening, while organizing files in her office, Elena received a visitor, the sergeant she'd carried. "Ma'am, I wanted to thank you properly." Elena looked up from her paperwork. "You already thanked me, Sergeant. Not for today, for Kandahar, for giving me 7 more years with my family." Elena's eyes filled with tears again. "You saved 47 soldiers. You remember all their names. But you forgot to save yourself from guilt you didn't deserve to carry." The sergeant placed a small wooden box on her desk. "The men from our old unit wanted you to have this." Inside was a simple compass, engraved on the back. "To Shepherd, you always bring us home." Elena held the compass, remembering fallen friends, living teammates, and the long journey from combat hero to file clerk, and back to something in between. "I'm not the same person I was," she said quietly. "No, ma'am. You're better. Because now you know that strength isn't just about who you can fight. It's about who you're willing to carry." The next morning, Elena reported to work as usual. But something had changed. She stood a little taller, smiled a little more. And when recruits struggled with their training, she was there to help them up. Type, "I will live kindly," if you believe that every good person deserves to be remembered forever. Elena's story isn't just about a race. It reminds us that society often mocks people who appear small or weak, but these same people sometimes carry loads we never imagined possible. Elena chose silence, but her actions changed an entire military base. Around us, there might be other Elenas, people who don't show off, but carry quiet strength inside them. If we learn to look and respect, we'll discover they're often the reason our communities move forward. Remember, true strength isn't about running faster than others. It's about carrying someone when they collapse. Real heroes don't seek spotlights. They seek opportunities to serve. They find people who need help, and they help them, without expecting anything in return. Elena could have stayed hidden in her paperwork forever. But when someone needed help, her true nature emerged. Maybe you have hidden strength too. Maybe someone around you is falling behind and needs you to turn around, go back, and help them reach the finish line. If you believe in stories that touch the heart like this one, leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe to SN Quiet Stories. We tell the stories that shouldn't be forgotten. Real people creating and telling stories. Not mass-produced content.